Vinícius, good afternoon. Thank you very much for agreeing to share with us from the channel Ultimately What Are We? Your near-death experience and other relevant experiences in your life. Please introduce yourself, tell us what you do, tell us where you're speaking from, and tell us everything that happened in as much detail as possible. Thank you in advance, and the floor is yours.
Carlos, I'm the one who is grateful for the opportunity for us to have this conversation here. My name is Vinícius Fagundes Barbara, and I confess that it took me many months to gather the courage and send you the email I did because I thought that this was, we're going to talk today was too little for the channel. After all, who are we? Very little experience considering the videos that I've already watched on the channel, which have dense experiences, right? Very consistent. I thought, gee, this is not going to be so relevant. But after a while, I built up this courage. I sent you, we talked, and we are here today. Well, my name is Viníciu. I live in Goiânia, right? Goiás. I've been an environmental engineer for nearly 20 years. I work in the environmental field. At the state level, I am an environmental expert for the Public Ministry of the State of Goiás, and I'm a professor at the Federal Institute of Goiás, Goiânia campus. And I did my master's in environmental engineering, PhD in environmental sciences. So how would I say my life is, my livelihood is the environment. I work so much teaching people, educating, forming, shaping future environmental engineers, and also working with environmental expertises throughout the entire state of Goiás. Well, besides that, I am also a folk artist. I found myself in this context of the pandemic when we were forced to stay in our homes in quarantine. Allow me to express myself artistically with natural elements of the Cerrado in terms of paintings and sculptures. What made me send an email to the channel, after all, what are we? I had an experience today. I am 43 years old, but approximately when I was about 27, 28 years old, I went with an older friend. We went to visit an aunt of mine from Mato Grosso. I am an orchidist to this day. I've been growing orchids since childhood, and this friend of mine too. And there where my aunt lived on a farm, there were many orchids in Mato Grosso, native ones, right? And we like to visit these habitats. We liked it. We've done this other times, and there was another impression. In this regard, I would like to take a picture in the end to know. And it was a quick round trip, and as we were coming back, he was driving the car. He didn't even have a driver's license back then. And it was a dirt road. He wasn't much of a runner, you know, Carlos, but still on a curve. In my understanding, the car's tire burst because he lost control of the vehicle very quickly. It was something a bit unexpected. And when I lost control of this vehicle, I was in the passenger seat. This vehicle flipped several times. I told you when I sent you the email, I said it was almost an NDE, quotation marks, because what I'm going to tell you actually, it's a NDE, but at the same time it was very fast. So it's like I had set the face on a little piece of the veil that was lifted, and then this veil was lowered again. That's the feeling I had. Why? Because while the car was overturning, and this must have lasted maybe 8 or 10 seconds in my perception, during this moment time, it turned into an elastic. It stretched out. The feeling I had while the rollover was happening is that it was lasting a long time, much more than these 8 or 10 seconds of my perception here, right? And at the same time that I realized that this thing had become elastic, the time a movie started to play of my life in my mind during this flip. Just like I tell you, it seemed to be in slow motion. I had time in this period of seeing various moments of my life in a film as if they were It's like one of those flashbacks we see on TV, nothing with of a reflective nature, something like, Vinícius, you have to remember this, you made a mistake in this. There was no this, it was as if it was a retrospective of me watching flashes or moments of my own life. This over 8 to 10 seconds, this sense of time that I'm telling you about, which really caught my attention, because once the car was flipping, it was happening in slow motion in my mind, and they flip at the same time, these images, and the car went down a slope and stopped. It didn't go upside down. Luckily, it stopped in the normal way. And this friend of mine fainted. And I didn't lose consciousness. I had a small cut on my arm because we were wearing seat belts, luckily for us. And what I think, if I wasn't, maybe I wouldn't even be here talking to you. Maybe I would have left. But this feeling became clear to me from the moment the car stopped rolling over. At the time that
It stopped, and
as
then
if
go.
I had, for this temporal feeling that we know in our day-to-day life, understand. So mine is that she was quick, she was like that. It was as if she had,
Wonderful, very fast.
weakly as I had nothing. If she hadn't become established, I don't know if the better word would be that, with more than other people who live, who come, who see, have contacts with other beings. I didn't have that. It was as if I'll give you an example for us to make a comparison. It's as if I put my head inside a water mirror to see the bottom of a lake. I didn't dive into the lake. I put my face in the lake. That's the feeling I had, because the question of extended time became very marked in a way. I'm not sure I can say. It's shocking because it's strange for us to say that time stretches, even though we don't experience it, but it really struck me. The issue of seconds lasting a lot that time, and it also marked me a lot the issue of, in the light of the images that came to my mind, as if I was kind of saying goodbye to myself then and there, you know. I don't know why that came, but I saw images of myself since childhood, which were flashes, right? Which were scenes passing in my life up to the car in my mind until the car stopped rolling and then stayed in the state. It was a total loss. The suitcases flew. We lost the phone, right? In fact, this friend went to get a tow truck. I had to spend an entire day there watching over what was left of the things until he comes back with that truck. Anyway, while I was there, I was thinking exactly about what had happened. How could I explain this issue of time? And from this stretch, that it marked me a lot. I never experienced this sensation again. What I can say is it's like time is elastic. And here we live in a certain tension of this elastic that we know in our day-to-day. But when that happened, this elastic is as if it had been stretched, stayed, and he extended it, right? That was the feeling I had about the time. We know it this way, but he extended and stayed. It got much bigger. The seconds lasted much longer than these simple seconds that we know here. That was it's a little bit, but for me it marked a lot. It's what I consider that's the closest I've gotten to experiencing death.
Had you thought about death until then?
I've been thinking about death since I can remember. Death has been a subject that instills me since I remember having any consciousness in my life. In fact, several, and sometimes in my life, especially in my teens, I would go a lot to the back of my parents' house at night. Me and the dogs, I would just sit there looking at the sky. I do this even today. Frequency. I look at the sky a lot and I keep wondering, like, what are we doing here? Where did I come from? How do we live immersed in this universe? What crazy thing is this that surrounds us and that we are here? surviving.
Do you feel nostalgic when you look at the sky?
I miss you a lot, Carlos. I miss you a lot. Today, I don't live with my parents anymore. There is a lawn at the back of the house. Many times I put a piece of fabric there. I lay on the grass at night. I'm looking at the sky, and it's a feeling like that something's missing, you know? I've had this feeling that something is missing since I was very little. Well, that's basically it.
We were talking before we start recording about the issue of objectivity and subjectivity. You were even commenting that as the years go by, you come to realize more of the subjectivity present in your life. Contrasting with objectivity, we even discuss color blindness. After all, what is being subjective or not? The way you describe time to me, it also places time as being influenced by subjectivity, as if each of us could depending on the situation, perceiving time in a different way. Does that make sense to you?
This makes sense in parts. Why? Because it seemed to me during this experience that this was not under my control. It seemed to me not. For me, nothing was under my control. It's as if I can't explain to you in detail. It's like that we needed a moment that would break with this traditional time we have. To be able to glimpse that there is another time, another way of passing time, that this is not in my control, to be able to say, no, I notice time passing faster, slower, the way I saw lived Carlos, I wouldn't know how, like, consciously. So there may even be a possibility, but I don't see that I could have that feeling. I, Vinícius, provoke myself or try in some way to get to this in that experience, because it's something that's beyond our control. That's the feeling I had. It's as if the exception were here our time and not the time that I managed to feel on this other side. It's not something like that. It's as if time here was accelerated and there it was normal time. That's what I mean.
I understand that you were somewhat surprised by what happened over time. You've had other surprises. Look, you've been thinking about death since childhood. At any point during this rollover, did you think you were dying or already dead?
I thought I was dying at the moment when scenes from my life started to play in my mind. You know, at that moment, I kind of even started to think like that. Vinícius' life was great. It went up to here. Congratulations, go ahead, because it's over. That was the feeling.
But at the same time, you thought about this without being able to reason what it would be, from what you made me understand.
I thought about death since I was a child, but like a scientist. Interestingly, I thought about death. Even today, death intrigues me as a scientific thought, as a researcher, because I try to give an explanation for it. Throughout our conversation here, we'll get to the second stage, which is the dream, which makes even more sense considering what I'm telling you now. Death, for me, it's something that intrigues my soul since I understand myself as people, you know, so I try to understand death in the meaning of life and for myself, not to prove this or that, but to understand for myself as a soul, as a person.
But either way, when the overturn happened, did you have any surprises compared to what you imagined death would be?
It was no surprise to me, and it felt like a very common feeling. The word is not common, it's normal. The feeling I had was that I was going down a path, was dying. I could die, death was there. face to face with me, but this feeling of dying throughout these seconds of the point did not scare me.
It's as if here you didn't know, but when you were there, you already knew it was like that.
That's right. It's as if it were an instinct, if we can use that word. It comes naturally. It's not something you rationalize in the sense of, oh my God, is this death? No, it seems like a natural passage. Whether you like it or not, want it or not, you will go through that, and that is natural. It's as if you already knew that it is that way. Perfect. That's the feeling I had.
So this gives the impression that at that moment you had access to a knowledge that perhaps you already had that was hidden.
Yes, I can say yes.
Did you have the feeling of knowing even more about other things that you don't know here?
No. I didn't have that expanded knowledge. No. What I had that marked me a lot was this issue of, I'm dying. Let's see what's ahead. Keep moving forward. This is it. That is this. It's nothing. Oh, it wasn't anything like that. Very marked. It was as if it was just another stage of this path I was following. Nothing is different, not more, not less.
You've explained the perception of time. What about space? Was there something different? For example, could you see everything forward and backward at the same time? Something different, the color of things?
I had no perception in that sense because first I didn't lose consciousness, and I would say I didn't quite get out body, no anything. It was all very physical. Why did the feeling of the death of time mark me? Because it was the only thing that escaped from this set of physical sensations that I'm used to feeling every day. Understand, time marked me. I didn't have a perception of vision or hearing or knowledge, none of that. I didn't have these perceptions, but time, it's unquestionable that it stretched in a way, elongated in a way that I never imagined could happen.
You said time stretched. You said in the email as if things seemed in slow motion. And I asked, was the sound you heard during the rollover also in slow motion?
Wow, Carlos, you've put me on the spot. Actually, I don't remember hearing any sound during the rollover. Of course, there was the sound of the car hitting things and rocks, but I don't remember hearing sound. I remember seeing the scenes, but even so, I had never thought about that aspect you're asking me. But searching here in memory, it seems to me that the scenes, a retrospective of my past life, passed through my mind in silence. It wasn't a thing marked by sounds. I don't remember sounds.
These scenes that you saw from your life, you saw as if there was a screen in front of you, and around this screen, a turnover was happening. Or it happened simultaneously, as if you were living two realities at the same time. The car flipping, and at the same time you were watching that screen or Duran. During the projection of those scenes, you were only seeing that. How did one thing relate to the other?
During the rollover, I was just seeing, although I was aware, searching in memory, I knew I was in a rollover, that the car was spinning, but what stuck in my head and in my mind were just the scenes. Gives retro. I don't remember a scene of breaking glass, of stone, of earth, because there was a lot of earth. I don't remember this, like in the sense of, it's as if the foreground was the flashback that passed. In my mind, this was engraved. Of course, all of this happened, these things, but what calls my memory, what catches my attention is this. They were scenes. There wasn't a specific screen I was looking at. It wasn't like that. It was as if these scenes were taking over my mind. Like when we close our eyes and remember something, that's the feeling. So I am in the place, but I'm not seeing anything here right now in front of me, but I have mental images that come to my head. That was the feeling I had.
But when you saw those scenes, you relived them as if you had returned to that time. And a second question, sir. Did you feel it's your feeling that you originally had in that scene? And still a third question. If you could feel what the people with you were feeling in those scenes.
No, not me. I didn't have access to feelings, neither mine nor those around me. And what was the first question? As if I went back to that moment, no. I was in a present moment, but watching the scenes go by as if they were a movie. I didn't feel at any moment transported to an earlier time. From childhood, from adolescence, no.
In other words, you didn't revive them. It's as if you were watching in a separate way from them.
Yes, exactly. That's it. That was it. The feeling was this.
Did you feel strangely at peace while you were in this extended time?
Oh, Carlos, I'm not going to tell you it was peaceful.
Hold on, let me just.
It was a feeling of the type, like it's supposed to be like this. I don't know what name I give to this. It's like this, Vinícius, it's this way. No need to question. It's this, pure and simple. That was the feeling. It didn't invade me a deep peace or anything. It invaded me a rational explanation, perhaps associated with this issue of death that I've been trying to understand since childhood. Kind of like, it's nothing more than this here.
That, in a way, contrasts with your lifelong quest for knowledge.
Absolutely, because I have a tendency to mystify death. Perhaps we all, the living, we have this tendency to mystify, to seem like a very deep this one. And it seemed so simple that it shocked me.
Both you can mystify, as you can think that nothing exists after. What was your position?
My position is that I always believed something exists beyond death. So I always found death mysterious. But while I was leaving that moment, the mystery, it seems there is no mystery. It appeared to be a truth that's always been there. Ali, this is what I want to tell you. It seemed to be a simple thing that was always there.
You talked about becoming a popular artist too. Do you relate this to the pandemic isolation or in some way to your near-death experience?
I relate this to the pandemic seclusion. Absolutely.
You didn't feel anyone's presence even when you spoke. Is that right? It was a perception that you had, not that someone was passing it on to you.
Exactly, that I had. No one passed it on to me. There was no whisper, nothing. Because Carlos, I've always been and still am very rational. So this experience, it marked me because it rationally proved to me in relation to my feelings and perceptions that death seems to me, it's much simpler than we think. Looking at this experience, you know, when you go with a lot of expectations, I've always carried this since childhood. And suddenly that seemed something fluid, something common. It's inevitable that everyone will go through, but I repeat, that's it. It's a bit frustrating. It's a bit frustrating. This is it. Look, that's it. It's simple. Keep going. Go on, go on. Sorry, I'm even talking a bit like this, but that's it. It's a natural thing that is, in essence, that everyone will have to go through.
I know you have another very special experience, which I also find very relevant that you tell us in as much detail as possible. But I'm asking, if between this near-death experience and this second experiencing,
if something also changed in your life in the perception of senses, if they became more heightened, if you felt, let's just say, a door between the aja, if you sense the feelings of people who approach you.
Carlos, that didn't have. Afterwards, I might even tell you a little more about this, and you might even cut it from the video because it might not make sense. But this subjectivity or this perception of something ajar or something that's what's not visible but we notice happened for me from March 2020 onwards with the pandemic because of this issue of from my artistic side which I let flourish. It's not related to the NDE. It has no direct connection with this dream we're going to talk about now.
Let's go. But then please take advantage now and tell us that I was curious.
Here's the thing.
It's because this is so intimate, huh, folks? And to this day, I'm trying to understand. But let's go. I am, as I told you, I am an engineer by training, Cartesian, precision thinking. My life, I am 43 years old. So until I was 40, it was like this. My life was planned by me. I want to do this. I want to do my university course, my master's, my doctorate. I want to pass in contests. I have arrived where I wanted. And now I'm going to keep going and wait that one day. That's exactly what I thought, Carlos, until I was 40 years old. When the pandemic came in March 2020, I had never had contact with anything in arts in my life. Then I found myself in this place where we're talking right now, this office. I already had a lot of botanical stuff that I collected, capsules, natural elements that I kept. And I wondered, can I put only a botanical painting on the board or can I put the element itself to admire? Why? Because I wanted a mental occupation at that moment. I looked at the internet, I look at news every day and I saw deaths and such, that crazy thing of pandemic. I was getting into a paranoia and I said, no, I'm going to work with my hands because I'm very rational more than I ever was. So, I need to take a break from this reflection and then I started doing the work that was even when I discovered your channel. So I made a lot of work watching the interviews you were doing with people. And then I started from that moment, this unexpected side for me. What is imagined came to the surface. And subjectivity came with him in a way that I had never experienced before. I took a trip to the Amazon at that time. On that occasion, in fact, about 15 days before the pandemic was declared, and I was already very sensitive, very affluated, because it seemed to me that today, looking back, it seemed to us something was really going to happen, and somehow I was already feeling it. And this artistic side that comes it's part of me, of my history, but it goes against the way I shape myself to live life, which is in a rational way.
Does the channel understand?
So from that moment on, from March 2020 onwards, I am learning to make subjective readings of life in a way that shocks even me. Because I went through, it's as if I had started to listen, not in the literal sense of someone telling me, but noticing situations. It's that show me something if I am alert to that for a certain message or for that certain signal. This is very heightened in me. I am 43 years old.
And this turns out to be
Each passing day, it flourishes more in the sense of understanding that life isn't Cartesian as I thought it was until my...
But speaks of earthquakes.
She is not Lysippus. This straight road that we plan and that you will reach a goal, it can bring a lot of surprising things as it happened to me. With this outburst of an artistic aspect that I never dreamed of and that has led me to situations and moments and opportunities. I'm just like speechless because if someone told me one day before, from tomorrow you will start to develop an artistic work, I wouldn't believe it. I would laugh in the person's face.
You would say that your intuition has grown a lot.
Exactly. I don't know if it grew or if I started paying more attention to it. Perhaps it was the second hypothesis. I started paying more attention to it. It was always there, but I didn't pay attention because of my rationality.
And do you perhaps relate this intuition to what exists beyond life?
For me, Vinícius, yes. And why did it catch my attention? Why did I want to send you this email? Because this situation of the car flipping over, I had just escaped. I was still under my 40s. So before this autistic outbreak, completely escaped from my life, from my reasoning, because I felt the issue of time, but I couldn't explain what that was. So it shocked me. And the second experience I'm going to share with you also escaped my rational pattern. Because it was a dream, I don't know if I can get into it specifically or if you want to ask something else.
I just wanted to make a comment and then we move on to this other experience. The comment is that the near-death experience is a concept still somewhat under construction. It first emerged because these experiences occur in surgical environments where the person agrees with the medical attention that the person had a cardiac arrest, had a clinical death announced many times, but she came back. So from there, the name near-death experience, but it is now commonly known that, and a situation of deep stress like a rollover. Also statistically, this leads a person to have such experiences. That's to say the least. There are other situations still, right? So, in a way, the fact that it was also quick, as was your case, doesn't mean it was less intense or not very transformative. You're going to recount a new experience, and I might even wonder, I would have had this new experience if I hadn't had the first one. Because the perception I have is that in a certain way, all that it creates a kind of expansion of our perception of life.
Yes, exactly.
So now I invite you to tell us this experience, which is an experience very unique, I can tell you.
Yeah, actually, I would say it's the most amazing. The most important thing that we are going to talk about today was the one that touched me the most, right? Deeply, because let me just go back so you can better understand the situation. Looking back from my 40 years backwards, if I could point out two situations where I felt things that I couldn't explain, right? Considering my very rational reasoning. One was from the NDE and the second was from this dream. So what do I want to say? I call it a dream, but it is not a dream. For me, it was not a dream because I dream very often. Common dreams, strange dreams, but the feeling they leave me is dreamlike. But this one that I will tell now was not a dream feeling, it was a feeling of real experience. That's what I'm going to talk about. So I didn't mention at the start, but I was raised in a spiritist center. Today I consider myself a person without religion. Although I exercise my faith daily, but I do not associate, I will say in the future, but today I do not associate with any religion. I think we don't, for me, need to be in any religious place to strive to be a better human being. So, well, and in this context, within this spiritual center, I met a person, a friend, and we became very close. Actually, two people, they were sisters because one passed away, including my best friend to this day. We are even going out later today. But she specifically, the sister, my other friend, suffered an accident and passed away. I must have been about 34 years old. And since we were very close, I felt her death a lot. And eventually she passed away, right? Life went on, and about 2 months later, I had an experience in sleep with her that I no longer call a dream.
Yeah, but it happened while I was sleeping. I was in front of an old house where I lived, right? I'm telling a dream, okay, in quotations. I was then sitting in front of the house where I lived on the sidewalk, leaning against the wall. And this friend of mine simply came up to me, walked over, and I was looking the other way. And when I saw she was in front of me, I had my legs stretched out and crossed, and I was scared because I don't dream in reality. I recognized this friend and instantly remembered that she was dead. So how was she there in front of me? That scared me. And I, at the moment, said her name was Milene. I said, Milena, I can't believe you're here. You're dead. And then she squatted. Then her hand on my leg, I remember she even crouched down and she had short hair like this. She even tossed her hair to one side like this behind her ear and said, Vinícius, let me tell you something. I don't have much time and I came back here to tell you what happens to us after we die.
And then Carlos, she took me to a theater.
It was just the two of us. She was wearing white clothes with a tonic and she took me to, I don't know, we might just show up. I don't remember if there was anything in between, but we were in a theater, just the two of us, and those wonderful curtains are closed red. And she said, Vinícius,
That's it,
when
see
we
you next
live
time. Bye.
here on Earth, it's like that. Then the curtains opened and there was a replica of planet Earth. I would maybe say that a meter and a half in diameter globe, right? So I could hug it. It would be like a ball, big ball, but I wasn't on stage. I was in the audience. So there was a wonderful replica of planet Earth floating in darkness, right? Stage darkness, and only one light on him. So she said, no, it's when we live, we are like this, you see. And then the light was only on planet Earth. And she said like this, and when we die, this happens. Then when she said that, the other lights of the stages lit up. And there were other planets floating there with Earth, but we couldn't see them, of course, because it was dark with the lights off, which doesn't mean they didn't exist. And then she told me more, when we die, that's what happens. It's like our perception. What she wanted to tell me was this. It's like our perception. Do this here, look. She used an example, an analogy with me. And it made perfect sense because of my logical thinking, right? She knew me deeply, so she used an analogy to show me that there's a lot more beyond what we live here. I remember I even told you in the email or call, I called it a mediocre life, this mediocre little life that we have, and that I don't even know if that word exists. I mediocreized my life, or in other words, I planned a life where I got where I wanted and thought I was going to follow this straight little road until I did, in a very rational way. And why do I look so much at yours, Carlos? Because this exercise reminds me that we are immersed in an immensity, unexplainable or full of mysteries, the universe, this thing much larger than
What we imagine.
so when I realize I'm too grounded, like rushing around and doing my things, then at night I look at the sky to remind myself that all of this is just a theater. That's the feeling I have. After this dream experience, it became clear to me that what we live here, what is a simulation, in the pejorative sense, bad, but it's a simulation. It seems like a simulation of something which is tiny and punctual. And when we die, we have an expansion of consciousness, a much larger perception of something we didn't perceive before. Something much bigger that has always been here and still is. We just don't notice it. We don't write because many people notice, connect to this. But me, Vinícius, I don't notice. I have to constantly exercise looking at something bigger, that we're immersed here in the universe, this crazy thing, all these planets, this issue, energy issue. This cannot be, in my opinion, speaking as a rational, it can't be just that life can't be just this that we live and works and eats and tried to travel every now and then. There is much more subjectivity than we think.
Without a doubt, I had never heard a story telling an analogy like this that you told us of the planet, of the theater, of a single light at the beginning and so many other lights showing so many other planets. And that's what I wanted to ask you about. But she was just referring to more planets, like there were, for example, life on other planets, or was she referring to even more things?
There's so much more yet. Still, this was an example, as I told you, an analogy. She was not telling me about our solar system.
She wasn't wanting to tell me that she has other plans?
There are nets around us. It's not that. She was trying to tell me, because of that example, that simulated thing, that simulation,
There is much more
that
than
we judge to see with our own eyes. In every sense you can imagine, broadly, she wasn't giving me a specific physical example. She was showing me that there's something much bigger and more expansive than we imagine. In that sense, this feeling became very clear.
Have you guys ever discussed about this topic, death while alive?
We have discussed this a few times, especially since we used to attend the same spiritualist church. We attended the same courses and we were very good weekend friends, but like that was more my subject. She always joked, "You're an old woman, you look like an old man, you have some questioning, some reflections, really deep, huh?" So I can't say that this subject has never come up in our dialogue. It has been present, but in very specific ways. They were very isolated and were more my own internal reflections, something that I shared with her constantly. In fact, I think it's important to make clear that I never arranged anything with her, nor ever arranged anything with anyone from TPAR. When you die, come back here to tell me what it's like.
But anyway, is it possible that she acted based on these conversations?
I can't tell you that. I can't tell you if she acted based on these conversations. She may have acted because of our relationship, our friendship. It's like she could have had a little escape there and said, "Catch that, I'm going to ask Vinícius what it's like on this side."
It even makes me think that she might have been very happy with her own discovery of what life was.
Yeah.
And wanted to share with a friend.
Divide, exact divide. And she was so surgical in that she doesn't leave me when I said that I remembered in the dream, I realized in the dream that she was dead, that I remembered this. She didn't even let me be dazzled by this because she didn't have time. She said, "Viníciu, like this, shut up, I don't have time. Come here because I need to show you a big thing."
You saw planet Earth on a stage. This makes me think, one thing you sort of mentioned, that life is a theater, it's not just a game it plays. She used to convey information about the before and after. Is it possible that within this information of hers, is there also information that life is a theater?
For me, yes. For me, the feeling that stayed with me, this was one of the feelings that I can tell you stayed. I mentioned this to you. If you go back to the recording, you will see. Then she wanted to say that it is this is a mediocre individual.
Thank you very much.
In the sense that we live here in this theater, playing our roles as parents, children, friends, companions, engineers, doctors in this context. Which is not to say if there is something after death.
And if this exists, would it be like this?
A kind of theater, because it's learning, right? And I understand that, yes, I understand that this was the essence of life, the message she wanted to pass me.
Did you just ask if there is something beyond life? I ask, is this a rhetorical phrase? Is it a habit of a rationalist mind?
It's the habit of a rationalist mind. Yes, because this is part of my personality. I think I'll go with it until the time comes for my individual answer.
But how do you feel today after these experiences?
So that's what I was going to tell you. One thing is what I rationalize, and another thing is what I feel. And what I've been noticing, Carlos, is that especially from the pandemic onwards, I've noticed that this subjectivity, it has been surfacing a lot, not just in me, I think in many people in my circle of friends and this new universe I entered, the arts, where people really have this issue. But I realized that I can speak for myself. This has made me reflect more on my role in the world, about, in fact, what I'm doing here, what I can expect for the future, and that life is not this predictable thing that I thought it was. And it seems to me that as we get older, this becomes more apparent. I don't know if this is my own experience, or if in fact as we age we start to pay more attention to these subjectivities in these signs that life gives us, perhaps preparing us for a future.
Do you somehow relate this increase in subjectivity to what you did as an expansion of understanding?
To me, yes. And let me tell you, when you do that, this movement that you just made, to me it makes a lot of sense because of my rationality. So I saw myself just like when the horse puts on that side blinders, so it doesn't look to this side, only here.
Hey.
I need examples like this to help me disconnect from this earth, not planet earth, but from this life, to remind me that something much bigger exists. So what Milena did to me in this example, she forced my sail to do this here, my conscience to see, right? This in a rational way too, because it brought me an analogy within a theater. These spheres, these planets, this has deeply affected me.
She knew you, huh? She knew what would work or not, right?
Exactly. So it does not help, no matter how much I have studied Spiritism for many years. Spiritism is a religion that believes in reincarnation, in life after. Even though I have studied this for many years, if it's for me to weigh everything and the example that Milene brought to me, her example weighs a lot more than my 16 years inside a spiritist house. Do you understand? Because it was something she brought in a language that I could decode instantly, and that marked me a lot.
That which you saw as a planet, and as for planets and other things that you had seen there on that stage, did they have their own life?
What do you mean, a life of their own, as if they were living organisms?
It wasn't a model, you were looking at the planet itself there.
The planet itself in a reduced form. The earth, it pulsed with life. Her blue is bright blue. It wasn't a ball painted to remind us that it was planet Earth. It was a scale model of planet Earth, so to speak. So, but I have never been off the planet, but I imagine that looking at Earth is exactly that image that I saw there. So it was not something, a mock-up made, I don't know, of styrofoam, something that resembled the Earth. No, it was the Earth itself.
You mentioned in a previous conversation we had something about a confirmation when you realized you had done well in looking for us. Could you share this story with all of us?
I'll share, but I confess that I am embarrassed to share. Look at my rationale again, trying to sabotage me, because it seems like a thing. A lot of people are going to think what I'm about to say is a silly thing, but to me it made total sense. When, as I've been rehearsing to send you this email for a long time, I was insecure because I thought it was too little for the path. So it's as if I were Vinícius. What do you have to bring to the table as a human to contribute to this NDE discussion? My contribution would be two very wilted bread rolls in my view, right? The NDE is partial, and Milin's case, well, anyway, I decided from one moment to another to send you the email, and I did. But I was very fearful because I thought, what will people think of this video if he wants to record finally? But so on the day I sent you the email, I go to the gym every other day, and on that day I had gym, so I left work and went there. And while I was doing the exercises, I was thinking, right, Vinícius, did you do right to send this email to Carlos? And I was on an exercise which is biceps, the one where we pick up the bar. You choose the weight you want there on the equipment, pick up the bar and pull. So there is a wire that stays in front of me connected to weights. And I was looking at the gym thinking about it. And when I turned my gaze to the wire, there was a damselfly. This was at night around 7:30 in the evening. It's not common for dragonflies to fly at night, as far as I know, and in a gym with music, with people, other people, an environment. It's stressful for a dragonfly, I believe, but it was perched on the wire. Here's a pair of scissors, so it was perched on the wire right at my eye level. Carlos, when I looked at this dragonfly, instantly it was confirmed to me, rest assured that you did. That was the message she brought me. I can't explain why. And look here, my rational trying to talk again. There may be things that don't have to be explained, but I instantly got confirmation, and I've been looking at this dragonfly for a while. Then I looked away again, and when I looked back, she wasn't there. In other words, she...
Sorry, I don't remember.
But she showed up with a cherry on the cake in this process of having the courage to send you the message, the email, and we...
Records this video.
They may be few for others, perhaps, but they were so deep to me. You see, for me, these two experiences, little in the eyes of others, meant a lot to me. That's why I was unsure about sending you the email.
I don't think they are small. I think they carry very valuable information, and we appreciate it. I appreciate your initiative, your sharing, which will help a lot of people.
I was just going to tell you that an addition, when I talk about this artistic part of the work, something that made me go this way too, it's because these works that I developed, Carlos, and they connect me with nature, with what is real, tangible, ancestral. And they helped me at the time to step back a bit from this screen issue, from social networks, from this volatile world we are diving into more and more. I think it's important, I don't know if it fits into the video, but to record that. Because I think that we as a society, and this goes along with what Milene also tried to show me, we also need to reconnect with what is real, with our essence, with that, with what surrounds us, with what's around us, with what is tangible, with what makes sense. Because there's no way we can live, and here I'm telling you as an environmental engineer, it doesn't make sense for us to live in a way digital, smashing, crushing, everything beautiful around us that exists to in some way enhance our lives and contribute to our evolution as human beings. Understand? So my job also goes a lot this meeting of recognition and belonging of human consciousness in relation to the surrounding environment.
Are you an engineer? Am I your son? Physical. And we know quite well what a scientific investigation is, the protocols and everything else. I ask you, in what way do you think science, taking into account your experience, can start noticing the amount of truth that exists in these experiences lived by you and so many others?
I think the first thing is to do this, that, for example, you do on this channel, is to give space about voice, about speech for people who have subjective experiences to speak. I think it goes by there. First, by a listening. I think we don't have keep looking for major discoveries that will change the world. I think the discoveries of life, these more subjective discoveries of the other side, they are much simpler to investigate than we think. It's just that we as a scientific community don't predispose ourselves. As far as I know, because this is not my field, it's environmental engineering. But as far as I've seen, the research focused on this is still very timid, very specific, very isolated. I think we don't need to think in a very overwhelming way or deep as a scientific community. I think researchers just have to allow themselves to listen. People's voices, people's stories, the experiences of people like you've been having. On your channel, I've noticed you intervened. She is a specialist, a homemaker, a university professor, an athlete, people from all walks of in this theater of life. You interview different characters who bring a narrative that has many similarities. Is it not considered scientific? Scientist is not possible. Because they are subjective reports, some of them objective. Because I've also seen interviews where people had evidence, right, that such a thing was in such a place, that there was such a dialogue, right? And the person, how do you say? The person was there and understood, noticed that dialogue and saw, heard, etc. So that's the goal. But to what extent must this objectivity continue to be discarded or neglected as winning? Life, it seems to me today, after these two experiences, life has many more things. There are things we can't explain, and that's okay. And let's look at this too. There's a lot we can't explain, many feelings we have that we can't even look at calmly and explain, but we feel, so it's real. See, I think maybe the path goes a bit through there, through listening, through observation, through perception, more or less there. I'm telling you, even as a researcher, I think more scientifically.
You as an environmental engineer, you deal with nature. Several people in interviews commented, some that the planet is alive, others that during the experience were received, inviting by the plants, as if the plants were moving and giving, welcoming them. I wanted to know, when you saw that planet in the theater, in a way you said something that made me think you felt it alive. I am alive too. I want to know how your experience modifies your work as an environmental engineer.
Wow, that's a deep question. Hold on, let me think a little. Carlos, this experience, and especially from the pandemic onwards, what I perceive as an environmental engineer is the following. People, and considering thus a context of humanity, people are saturated with academic knowledge about the environment. Everyone knows that you can't throw paper on the floor, that you have to separate the trash, etc., 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 but they don't change their attitudes. Many of them don't. And what I realize is that these experiences, they brought me as a watershed, is that it is no use us working a lot of mental and rational issue. We have to attack a little the sentimental side, because as people realize, they create some sentimental bond with nature. Change comes naturally. I'll give you an example, cut it if necessary, but just so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. This here is one of the elements that I use in my work. This is called serum. I use 3 capsules, so I don't use the seeds. I use the seed wraps. It could be considered plant waste. So this is the fist contact, so take a good look. Look, if I say this here is a celu, for you or whoever is watching the video will say, oh, okay, another species, another capsule. Now you're going to see how things start to change. This is the fruit of a tree that occurs mainly in the state of Amazonas, a gigantic tree. And the Indians from some tribes use this hair on their genitals when they go hunting to protect themselves. Because they run through the forest, right? You have to chase after animals. They use this hair like protector of your genitalia while they are in hunting activity. So it's another piece of information I brought, the serum. It changes context because you start to realize that this has an ancestral utility. In this case, I could spend hours talking about various species.
That's what I
And
use.
as I add more information about the environmental relevance of a species like this one, there's no way you can know that the Huey being exists, that it's being knocked down, burned, that the area is being deforested, and you don't do. You get it? I'm going to give you another example. Maybe, look at this. This is a sapokaya. It's a tree that produces this gigantic fruit. It's super heavy. And here it gives some edible nuts. This is also from the Amazon, so it gives the tree, gives this fruit, and gives a lid that comes off. Measuring when the plant, the fruit is ripe and these chestnuts fall on the forest floor. Besides the aesthetic aspect of this, and this capsule, the indigenous people use it to store water from one day to the next. The water stays in here. Inside, and after about 24 hours, they can drink. It produces a substance that is good for aiding the digestion process for those who are feeling sick to their stomach. See, or another example just to finish for you to understand. Here is a jequitiba. It's the fruit of the largest tree species in Brazil, the jequitiba. It's a majestic species in the forest, gigantic, centuries old. And it is, for example, to use. It was used by people in the past as a rudimentary pipe. People call this here bingo player. The very pipe of Satsi Perere's fruit of jequitiba, and look how interesting this. It's his lead. It's a nail, literally. Look at this. It's a wonderful nail that comes loose. There's this capsule on the tree. As the humidity decreases, the seeds loosen, the seeds are winged and fly away, and this fruit remains here. So where am I trying to get? As I introduce these to people, these elements, these beauties, and the environmental relevance of each of these species, it's impossible for one's consciousness not to change. And we as a society, as humanity, need to change our consciousness today before yesterday. It's not for yesterday. Our system, it's collapsing. I tell you this because of my nearly 20 years of experience in the environmental field. So as long as we commodify nature and think that everything is profit, and we don't need this species except to use them to fill our pockets with money, we're going to have serious problems. So my work too, I don't make a living from this art. I already told you this. My goal, even as a teacher, is to raise people's awareness to first introduce what we have that most people don't know. Many people know what the species from other countries are, but they don't know the Guatambu. They do not know Jequitiba, Jatoba, Pereiro, Ipi Verde. So my work is very much about raising awareness, looking for a change of behavior considering the good of the community and our own good. Because we can't live without these beings that share existence with us in a joint way.
All this is going, okay?
Oh, really? Maria, my God, so let's go, okay? If you think you should go, okay.
Would you go so far as to think that nature has feelings?
You ask me if it's hard because I work with environment. I am an environmental engineer, but yes, nature has feelings and more. We are part of it, even though that seems quite obvious. In life, in real life, we don't see it this way. We see ourselves apart from nature, but we forget that we are integrated into this whole context. We are part of this community of beings that breed, that reproduce, that live to keep this planet as we are. Oh, Carlos, just to give you an idea, the atmosphere is like today, and the function of the activity of hundreds of thousands of years that plants did. The planet didn't arise with this atmosphere as we know it. This is the result of a biological process, of the metabolic of organisms that breathe. So today I'm breathing the air that my ancestors from centuries and millennia ago somehow breathed. So all of this is interconnected, and I understand that change goes through this awareness. The problem is that the system as it is today, it forces us to create a bubble between us, a separation. I put air conditioning, I create devices to separate myself from nature, and I don't think we should go around hugging. What I'm trying to say is that we catch a deep link with nature, which has always existed. We need to recover this connection. It's not with nature, it's with us. It's up to us. We can't lose the ability to smell a flower, to admire a tree while being a being. Wonderful. To observe an animal, to observe the birth of an organism. This is very beautiful. This is simple. If you think that God, and if you want, you can put, for example, Instagram, where I present the work, because there I have videos presenting the species of the Cerrado.
Send me your Instagram and everything else, because I put it in the video description.
And I'm going to explain to you that even it's called Tutorial Studio. Tutoya is a word that you can see, doesn't have my name, isn't Vinícius Fagundes. It's a studio Tutoya, and I insist on being hidden at this first moment. Tutoy is a Tupi-Guarani word. It's a beautiful expression. It means how beautiful, gorgeous. It's an expression. When I see these things, I say, guys, what a beautiful thing. What a beautiful thing. So it was a tribute I made to the indigenous people there's a lot, we give him a lot of respect. And there on my Instagram, if you look, there's no price for anything because it's not there for business, even though some people want to buy and I don't sell. But there, if you go to the video section, you will see me with a video that I should post today. I posted one last week about Timgui. I show people, Carlos has a bunch of people who have these trees next to their house and never stopped to look. Do you notice we are so alienated and so focused on this digital world that we don't allow ourselves to look at a flower, to look at a fruit that's fallen on the sidewalk? Look at this, look at that. And you want that little cow's paw vacancy that we like to step on when we're on the sidewalk? Drought. This here gives wonderful works. And so I think this work goes through the perception of nature and the perception of ourselves. In my opinion, I think the change of mandatory shift of humanity's thinking, which obligatorily will pass through environmental issues, because the climate issue is not exclusive. From a country, it will force humanity to unite, to seek a joint solution, because otherwise we won't be able to overcome this.
What are your final words? What is it? The essence of the message you want to leave for all of us in this complex world moment?
Life is not only this here that we judge to be. If I could sum everything up in one sentence, that would be it. Life is much more than we imagined. Life is much broader than we even dream. That's the feeling and summary of the experiences that I've learned.